So President Trump started his day doing what he, well, normally does. Whines on Twitter about the Mueller investigation, but this time he went after Michael Cohen. Now, Michael Cohen, of course, earlier this week had done a committee hearing with the House Oversight Committee, and he dropped quite a few bombshells on the Trump organization and on Trump himself. Now, following that, well, the president is not too happy about this and tweeted out an attack against Cohen early Friday, claiming that his testimony had been, quote, totally discredited by a Fox News report. Now think about that, right? So I think it was Hannity. It's either Hannity or Tucker Carlson, who did, probably both, did some news segments about how Cohen completely discredited himself, which is hilarious because he actually didn't. Cohen, interestingly enough, and I've said this before, Cohen is a snake. Cohen is a liar. He was caught lying to Congress before, right? The thing is that he was doing it on behalf of Donald Trump. And he was doing it on behalf of Donald Trump for Donald Trump in order to protect Donald Trump. So now he's got nothing to lose and really nothing to gain. And so at least at this point, he actually is being honest. And look, he presented quite a few things that could land the Trump organization in major, major trouble. Now, as I said before, the president is not happy about this, and he tweeted this out. I see. Now that the 2-year Russian collusion case has fallen apart, there was no collusion except by, and it's spelled by as in by, crooked Hillary and the Democrats. They say, gee, I have an idea. Let's look at Trump's finances and every deal he's ever done. Well, if you want to find money laundering or tax evasion, then you would generally want to look at somebody's finances. I'm just saying, yes, that's where you want to go. Now, as far as Russian collusion, I've talked about that before, right? And that is not the thing that was that would bring Donald Trump down. I've been saying that all along. That's why I've been always afraid of the Mueller investigation, and had become more and more skeptical of what it would actually find, as the investigation continued, because I think that it looked, and we don't know this for sure, but I think it was probably too limited in scope. So, meaning that we're not really going to find anything there, and it's going to be disappointing. The real crimes, of course, have to do with, again, money laundering and other financial crimes. And so you would have to look into the finances. Now, where does President Trump not want you to look? Into his finances, of course. Now, he continues in his tweets. He says, let's follow discredited Michael Cohen, which, by the way, not discredited, and the fraudulent and dishonest statements he made on Wednesday. Again, now, what's interesting is that there is no proof that anything that he said, for the most part, and I guess there's a couple parts that I would be like, I don't know about that, Michael. Like, for example, when he said, the moment and Trump will get to this, the moment I turn against Trump is Charlottesville. No. The moment you turn against Donald Trump was the moment you got caught by the FBI. When your office got raided. So let's be honest about that, right? But anyway, and Trump mentions this. He says, no way, it's time to stop this corrupt and illegally brought witch hunt. Time to start looking at the other side where real crimes are committed. Republicans have been abused long enough. And again, I think it was in another tweet, a different tweet. He talked about, like I said, the where Cohen had been. Well, okay, so they talked a lot of things about Cohen. For one, like some sort of book deal that Cohen is supposedly having, that he's been shopping around for to sell his manuscript or whatever, and then he had changed the manuscript, whatever. But at the end of the day, this is him saying, I'm a victim. I mean, Republicans, we have been abused enough. Really? Does anybody remember Benghazi? How about, does anybody remember the emails? Now, I talked about the emails, right? I think the emails were really important. Now, she got hammered on those emails, Hillary Clinton did. And look, rightly so. A lot of the stuff in the emails were important, right? And so, but that's all we talked, like, even mainstream media, that's all they talked about. Despite the fact that Donald Trump had some major issues as well. So, who's getting beat up more, right? What about Tan Suitgate? What about the Bill Clinton impeachment? No. You want to talk about who's been abused. And again, some rightly so, right? Republicans generally have not been abused. No, what they are is, again, they're a bunch of snowflakes and they're doing projection. They would go after the Democrats in some of the most vicious ways possible. And look, sometimes rightly so, but anytime anyone went after them for actual corruption, and I'm not saying that the Democrats haven't done corruption, of course they have, but in a lot of cases, the corruption, namely comes from the right. So let's be honest about that. We have seen a lot of cases of Republican corruption and Republican hypocrisy. And when you point that out, oh no, suddenly it's the Republicans that are the victims. Either the Democrats are super weak snowflakes, or they're super, super strong and they're abusers. I know where they're at. I know what the Democrats are. And the Democrats, I should say the Democratic Party, for the most part, with various notable exceptions, is sort of where the Republicans used to be. They are now sort of the party of big business and big corporations, while the Republican Party is basically insane at this point. So, and there we go. Now, anyway, I got one more great example of abuse, by the way. Birtherism. You guys remember that? Again, there's literally a conspiracy that the first black Democratic president was from Kenya and not actually an American. So, come on. You want to tell me your Republicans are the victims here, that they're being abused and victimized. But that's the thing. It's projection. This is classic victimhood mentality. And it's funny, again, as I said, when progressives, I'm not saying the Democratic Party, but I'm saying progressives, right? When we stick up for marginalized communities and we try to get them help and we try to get them opportunity, we try to get them things like healthcare and good education, we're supporting victimhood, right? But when Republicans and corporate Democrats, they revel in their greed and their corruption and take money from giant donors and then, of course, launch the most heinous attacks against progressives, and we decide to call them out for it, they scream bloody murder. They say they're the victims, and then they call for civility. It's unreal. But this is what happens. This is the state of modern politics. There's an entire base of people on the right, especially, that can't wait to feel victimized. And I mean, people wonder why there's a group that specifically supports Donald Trump 100% still, even after everything. And it's because they feel victimized too, or they want to feel victimized. And look, some of it is true. For example, the neoliberal establishment economics, right? So you want to talk about being a victim of that? Well, most of the country, people, everybody who's not rich is a victim of that neoliberal establishment economic system that is crushing workers into the ground. That's fair. But in other areas where they're actually not being victimized, Trump makes them feel like it's okay to feel like a victim. For example, when women get more rights or they get rights over their own body that they didn't have before, men suddenly feel victimized. Come on, man. Not only that, but when it comes to right-wingers, their portrayal in the media, when it comes to things like Black Lives Matter and fighting against racism, suddenly you got a lot of people on the right that are feeling a little bit victimized. Which is, again, it's frustrating because, hey, you're not losing anything. When someone else gains something, you don't lose it. This is not a zero-sum game. Black people getting the right to not get shot in the street by police doesn't mean that you lose something. But again, it's insane. But Trump makes people feel like it's okay to be a victim, despite having some advantages. Now, you might ask, as a white person, what kind of advantages do we have? I mean, we're not like starting off with like nobody hands us a gold mansion or, a brand new car when we're born. That's true. And so you might think, what advantages are we given? But when you realize that the advantage that we're given is the benefit of the doubt, right? That we're not considered to be criminal. Or, for example, there's a phenomenon where white people identify black people as looking older than they are. Like, for example, somebody like Tamir Rice, right? I think there were people that thought that he was like 12? They thought he was like 16 to 18 years old. I mean, it's crazy stuff like that we don't have to deal with. That's our privilege, right? And so we have that privilege and people don't. And so we have those advantages. And look, pointing out that we have that advantage, for some reason, makes certain people feel like, oh no, you're coming after me. Now I'm the victim. And speaking of other advantages that a lot of people don't actually have, but Trump did, Trump inherited $400 million from his dad and a successful business empire and a name that he could market. Most people don't get that. And yet Donald Trump claims to be a victim in almost everything, right? He had all these advantages and he screwed it up. He ran his businesses basically into the ground. He went bankrupt 6 times. And likely the reason that he doesn't want to release his tax returns is most likely, or I should say like one of the biggest reasons I think to him is that it might show that he's not as rich as he claims to be. So there's that. and look, through all of that, everything that he's done, which is, look, tax evasion, that's something that they're looking at when it comes to Trump, keeping as much money as possible, screwing his dad out of, or his fellow family members out of money in order to get an even larger amount of his dad's money. All that stuff he did, stiffing workers. He still considers himself a victim. And there are people who believe he's a victim. People like Michael Cohen. Michael Cohen used to believe that. And Jim Jordan and Mark Meadows and all of these pro-Trump conservatives, they have all fallen for this narrative. And another thing is, of course, they feel victimized by progress and by, the law, when people actually try to go and punish people who are wealthy and powerful. And so, look, they're used to flouting the law with impunity, right? Because for the longest time, they've had the money and they've been able to rig the system. So, and so Donald Trump, despite being named by, as a criminal, he is individual one, being named on that by some of the closest members of his inner circle, will sadly probably not face any sort of punishment. I don't see Republicans impeaching Donald Trump. I don't think they'll do the right thing. So there's this bet going on between Cenk Uygur and Anna Kasparian on the Young Turks on whether or not Republicans will do the right thing. Anna says they will not, and I agree with her on that. I don't think Republicans will do the right thing. I think they're in their own cult mentality, their own victimhood complex, and so they will not do the right thing. They will continue to support Donald Trump no matter what, because to them, criminality is not a bug, it's a feature. So, and it's pretty terrible when you think about it, because you've got so many people who could potentially allow a criminal to continue being in the White House because it helps them retain power and money. And at the end of the day, that's kind of what motivates people around Trump and the politicians that support him. So, hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation, set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent progressive media.